here's where Jesus preached. Here's Jerusalem. And he kept going up and down between the two of them. That's a lot of trekking. That's a lot of walking. Jesus spent most of his time walking. In his life, he walked from Nazareth to the River Jordan to be baptized. He traveled to the Judean Desert for the temptation in the wilderness. He traveled across the Jordan to near Bethsaida in Galilee to call the first 5 of the 12 disciples. Then turned north towards Galilee to attend the wedding at Cana. He continued on from Galilee to Capernaum, then south to Jerusalem for the Passover. Then he left for the countryside of Judea, passed through Samaria, traveled again to Galilee, and once reached Galilee, then he goes back to Cana and Capernaum, and finally returns to his hometown of Nazareth, where he preaches in the synagogue. In a few short months, he has already walked hundreds of miles, and so being a former carpenter, walked hundreds of miles. He must have been strong, he must have been athletic, he must have been very rugged. If you ever get a chance to look at the Shroud of Turin, okay, and it shows you the image of Jesus Christ. And when we're in Jerusalem, they will, there is a display there of the Shroud of Turin. It's a copy of it, along with a complete display of everything associated with his death. And we're supposed to be, please God, that works out, we're supposed to be able to go through that museum, right? He walked thousands of miles in the 3-year period, as far as we can tell. So when you consider this is the Sea of Galilee, right? And he's walking around. We got Bethsaida here. We got Capernaum here. Way up here, above it, is Cana, right? Tiberias is over here, okay? You know, where Peter and James were fishing, Andrew, okay? Then we come back down here, and we're hiking down here, okay? Just to give you a sort of understanding, from here to here is 10 miles, okay? On one hand, it's not a long distance. On another hand, it's a long distance when you're walking on foot, okay? All right? Mount Tabor is over here, okay? Right? So, once again, it's hills, mountains, flatland, lake. The belief that of the Sea of Galilee is that at one time the Sea of Galilee actually went all the way out to the edges here, okay? This is what it is today, okay? Which means Tiberias would have been underwater at one time. Nazareth, Jesus' hometown. A hillside house dating back to the 1st century CE in northern Israel may have been the Nazareth home where Jesus was raised. According to researchers, the stone and mortar house, first identified in the 1880s, is likely to have been the home in which Mary and Joseph brought up their son. Cut into limestone hillside, the house contains a series of rooms and a stairway. Part of the original chalk floor as well as the doorway have survived. While it's impossible to say for certain, there is no good reason not to believe that it was Jesus' home. One of the things that we're going to run into is we're going to go to a number of different archaeological sites, okay? And the part that's really, really entertaining is they'll say, this is the spot where, okay? Well, it could be over here, and it could be over there, and it could be over there, and it could be, it's somewhere in the general vicinity. Okay, the Christians had a habit of marking stones, right, where certain things happened. Okay, the only trouble is stones get moved, right, and then it was years before people started building churches or some kind of shrine over the different locations. So the specific site of is hard to say, right? For instance, Emmaus. Okay, there are 3 Emmauses in Israel. Okay, I'm hoping that we will have Mass at one of them, but not all of that has been confirmed yet. But the one that I've asked for is the one that I believe to be the correct one. Not that I'm exactly an archaeologist or anything like that, but it's the one that I like. So, The Judean Desert is the desert in Israel and the West Bank. So it covers both Israel and the West Bank, descends to the Dead Sea, stretches from the northeast Negev to the east of Bethel, and is marked by terraces and escarpments. Now, in the terraces and the escarpments, we will see some agriculture taking place there. It has steep escarpments dropping to the Dead Sea and the Jordan Valley. And as we drive down to the Dead Sea and through the Jordan Valley, you'll see that escarpment, okay? And when we hear about, Jesus' temptation, right? And, throw yourself off of this cliff, right? You'll have a sense of the power of those cliffs, right? Just to give you a sense of it, okay? This is what the cliffs look like, right? Anywhere from 600 and some feet to 1,200 feet drop, right? It's quite impressive. You'll notice also the terrain of that land. There's the three people that are walking in there. You can sort of see the little spots. Can you see them? Right? Okay. Kind of gives you a sense of the depth, okay, and the size of the area. Bethsaida, a city east of the Jordan River, in a desert place that is uncultivated ground used for grazing, possibly the site of the miraculous feed of the multitudes with the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. It's possible to come up with a site of the village of Bethsaida. The argument is whether or not it's exactly where it is, or whether it's a little more by the Sea of Gennesaret, and it is what it is today. A ruined site on the east side of the Jordan on rising ground 2 kilometers from the sea. The question that they have there is, and I'll go back. Okay. If Bethsaida is there, and it's supposed to be a fishing village, and that's 2 kilometers from the sea nowadays, then part of the question is, has the sea really shrunk that much? Right?
Yes.
And the idea is, pretty much they're sure it has. Okay. They also talk about tectonic rifting. Okay, and when you look at this rift, okay, that goes up and down here, right? There's 2 plates. The western plate and the eastern plate that are pushing up against each other, okay? So there's the tectonic shifting that takes place there that may also account for the drop in water level, okay? You'll have other people arguing global warming and everything else. Cana among the Christians and other students of the New Testament, Cana is best known as the place where, according to the 4th Gospel, Jesus performed the first sign of his public miracles, the turning of a large quantity of water into wine. Again, Cana is, should have set these up differently. Cana is considerably north of here, all the way up there. So it's about 20 to 25 miles north of Bethsaida. Okay. The other thing with Cana is the name more English than it is Arabic. Kafkana is what they believe is what we refer to as Cana. Somewhere in the 8th century, they can sort of get it back to there and that kind of thing. The general view, starting from the 12th century, placed Cana at Capernaum, a site 8.5 kilometers to the northwest of Capernaum, which is even farther north and west than we think it is. Okay. Later, the traditional identification of Capernaum emerged strongly in the mid-14th century and until the present day. The reality is, was it here, was it there, and as they continue to do their archaeological digs, maybe we'll discover more. But right at this point in time, it's in that general location. Okay. The main churches in Capernaum are the Franciscan Wedding Chapel and the Greek Orthodox Church of St. George. And near the two of them are usually closed. The Roman Catholic Chapel of the Apostle Bartholomew Nathaniel is generally open. So it's always a nice little tidbit that we actually keep our doors open. Capernaum was a fishing village established during the time of one of the early, call it, Jewish leaders, Hasmon Eans. I have no idea how to pronounce that. And it had a population, they figure, about 1,500. And of course, you can see Capernaum is right on the edge of the sea. Okay. Here again is part of the question. If Bethsaida was a fishing village and Capernaum was a fishing village, and the sea shrunk, then Capernaum would have been underwater, where it sits today. So, was it there? Was it farther out? Was it exactly in the same place? It's very hard to say. Okay. The interesting part about it is in the excavations at Capernaum, where it sits today, they have found two synagogues, one on top of the other. Okay, which kind of makes us wonder. There's a house turned into a church by the Byzantine, which is said to be the home of St. Peter, and we will be stopping there for sure because that's always one of the high points. Jerusalem is one of the neatest things about this trip, okay, because there is so much history that is associated with it. It's a city located on a plateau, okay, so we're up higher, okay? So we're going to go up to it because it's in the mountain regions, okay? And it's between the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea, so it drops off on both sides, so you have the winds coming up on both sides of it. It's one of the oldest cities in the world, okay? Its the original name comes from the City of Peace, which is rather strange because during its long history, Jerusalem has been destroyed at least twice, besieged 23 times, attacked 52 times, and captured and recaptured 42 times. But it is the City of Peace. A contradiction in terms. Okay. Part of Jerusalem, called the City of David, was settled in the 4th millennium BCE. In 1538, walls were built around Jerusalem under Solomon the Magnificent, and today those walls define the Old City, which has been traditionally divided into 4 quarters: the Armenian, the Christian, the Jewish, and the Muslim quarters. And the Armenian and the Christian is where we will run into some of our entertainment, because some of the churches that we will go into will be under the authority of the Armenians and the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, right? And so each only has certain times of the day when they're allowed to have their tour people go through them. And that sometimes gets rather entertaining. The Old City became a World Heritage Site in 1981 and is on the list of the World Heritage Sites in danger because it's constantly struggling. Modern Jerusalem has gone far beyond the Old City's boundaries, and when we're there, one of the things we will notice is the Old City and everything around it. The Old City is where Pontius Pilate and the Praetorium would have been, okay, the Roman headquarters. And of course, the Garden of Gethsemane, which was an olive grove, is up on the hillside on the other side across from the Old City. What's interesting is that is now all fully developed. There's a huge Jewish gravesite there. But Jesus would have walked from the Garden of Gethsemane into Jerusalem, right? And frequently the scriptures refer to his being in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the night before he dies, he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the soldiers come to the garden to drag him back to the Praetorium in the Old City. So we'll have a chance to walk some of that, okay? Because we will have Mass over in one of the churches on the hill, Gethsemane, and then trek our way down part of it. And then usually the bus picks us up and they take us somewhere else. Judea, the name originates from the Hebrew Canaanite and later Neo-Babylonian, Persian named Yehuda or Yehud for the biblical Israelite tribe of Judah. It's associated with the kingdom of Judah, which the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia dates from 934 until 586 BCE. The name of the region continued to be incorporated through the Babylonian conquest, Persian, Hellenistic, Roman period as Yehuda, Medinata. So it's got this long history, okay? And when we look at it, okay, Judea is all of this area here, right? And down through here to the Dead Sea, okay? Primarily desert, okay, until you come up here against the mountains, okay? So it's a huge tract of land, okay? The southern part of Israel. We can't talk about Israel without talking about the West Bank. The West Bank is a landlocked territory near the Mediterranean coast of the Western Asia, forming the bulk of the Palestinian territories. The West Bank shares boundaries by the Jordanian-Israel armistice of 1949. How many of you know the story of that? Okay. At the end of the Second World War, because the Jewish people had fought so hard with the Allies and that kind of thing, the British government thought it would be only fair to give the Jewish people back their homeland. Okay. The downside of it is it didn't go over well with some people. Okay. And so at the time, Israel was given Israel was given all of this, including the West Bank. Okay. And then wars and disputes and till today where we continue to have a struggle. The problematic back in 1949 is that the British did not consult with the people who actually lived there. And all of a sudden this land is deemed to be Israel, except that at the time the population was mostly Christian and Arabic. Okay? There weren't a lot of Jewish people living there. Okay? Except that after the homeland was given back to them, there was an influx of Jewish people from all over Europe. Okay? Anybody who had survived the Second World War, was Jewish background, tended to make their way to Israel. At that time, back then, 45% of Israel was Christian. Today, less than 10% of Israel is Christian. Okay? And it's sort of the way things go. Okay? It's also one of the reasons why when we go there as a Christian tour group, or whenever you go there as a Christian tour group, we tend to try and support the Christian the Christian shops. Okay, so one of the places we'll stop is in Bethlehem, because it's a Christian shop and the Christians are the ones who supply the artisan work that goes into the shop. Okay, the interesting thing is when you Ron, when you were in Israel, did they take you shopping into the Jewish, the Muslim, or the Christian section?
Mostly Christian.
Mostly Christian. Yeah. We found it very funny on the trip that we went there, because when we came out of the Holy Sepulchre, you come into an area where there is a Christian shopping area, there is a Muslim shopping area, and down the hill there's a Jewish shopping area. And when we came out of there, our guide took us directly to the Muslim area. The only thing I knew about the Christian shopping area outside of the Holy Sepulchre is that you had to go through a little tiny doorway that was about the size of that doorway, right? And then you went down a very, very narrow alley for the better part of, well, twice the length of this hall. And then you got into the Christian shopping area. So when we're standing in the shopping area and I'm looking around going, we're in the wrong place, right? You know, but for some reason, the Muslims have a tendency to pay the tour guides more than the Christians do. So we had part of our group that wanted to go back to the hotel. So we sent the tour guide back to the hotel with those people who wanted to go back to the hotel. And I took the people back into the Christian shopping district. And the thing is, there's not a lot of difference, but one of the entertaining things we found is in the Christian section, you'll come in there and the thing is like, okay, you've got this olive wood rosary, okay, and it might be, for lack of better reasoning, say it's $1, right? Okay. You can go over to the Muslim district and you can buy 3 of them for $1. Okay. Except that the ones in the Muslim district, if you know anything about woodworking and that kind of thing, the first thing you'll realize is that they were made on a machine, versus the ones that you got in the Christian section were not made on the same quality of machine that was. And more likely, the one that you bought in the Muslim district came out of China. China does a lot of business with Israel, importing religious stuff or exporting religious stuff to Israel. And it's, you know, they keep. So
the Muslims would actually sell crucifixes with Jesus on it and
Yep.
rosaries and that kind of
And
thing?
statues of Mary and statues of Joseph. And, yep.
Oh,
Hey,
okay.
so did the Jewish shops. One of the coolest things though about Jerusalem was Fridays the Muslim shops are closed, Saturday the Jewish shops are closed, Sunday the Christian shops are closed, and they hold very firmly to that, right? What I found very interesting there was there's a high level of respect between the different denominations if you live your faith. Like a lukewarm Christian or a lukewarm Muslim or a lukewarm Jew, they have no time for. But if you're a strong believer, you're respected for that. But it's kind of like St. Paul's, better you be hot or cold and not lukewarm. If you are lukewarm, I spit you out of my mouth. Well, they're kind of like that. You know, if you stand up for your faith, they respect that. So the Christian section of the old city is the smallest section of the old city, okay? And that's kind of like why we get the side door and down the back alley and that kind of thing. It is kind of neat how they've managed to chisel more and more shops into the back alleys and that kind of stuff, right? Because on the other side of these walls are usually homes, and they just sort of open it up, and now my home becomes my shop kind of thing. Another thing to be very careful about, and I don't think Jesus had this problem, okay, is when Jesus was walking around, he didn't have a lot of money, so they didn't sort of identify him as somebody with money, okay? One of the things, if you're looking at something, don't ask how much it is unless you really are interested in intending to buy, because they will follow you down the street and up the alley and around the corner trying to make a sale, right? And part of that is their desperation. They are very, very much dependent upon the tourist dollar. They don't have a lot of economy going for them outside of the tourist dollar. That's also one of the reasons why tours going into the Holy Land are very, very highly protected, okay? Because if all of a sudden they lost their tourism, it would affect the Jews, the Gentiles, everybody, okay? The Arabs would be out of work. The Christians would be out of work. The Jewish people would be out of work. There is so much of their economy that is dependent upon the tourist dollar. And there are times when I think it'd be really, really nice to be like Jesus, walking around the country, not having to put up with people coming up to you constantly trying to sell you something. or coming up to you and wanting to put a small lamb on your shoulder so that they can take a picture of you and then sell you the picture for an exorbitant amount of money, right? $5 US, $5, right? The currency of the country is shekels, but basically it runs on American dollars, right? So if you've got American dollars when you're over there, you're covered. My way of traveling there is I carry a little bit of money in my pocket and I have my credit card. That's it. You know, I don't believe in carrying a lot of money. There are banks everywhere, you know, and my Interact card works everywhere in the world. So why would I worry about that? So in Jerusalem itself, there's one of the places that we'll go to is the Wailing Wall, and above the Wailing Wall is the Golden Mosque. Okay. Ron, when you were there, were you able to get into the mosque? No. Okay. The mosque has been closed to visitors for quite some time now. Okay. I do know some people who did get into the mosque 20, 25 years ago. But nowadays, it's like you can walk up this long stairways and walk around the mosque, but we would be quickly identified as Gentiles, infidels, and not allowed in the mosque at all, right? So generally what we do is we stand at a distance and take pictures of it, and you know. What's interesting about that one too is the mosque is built above the temples, right? And the tradition, it holds that underneath the mosque and underneath the temples is the stone of creation. And the Jewish people for years and years and years have wanted to dig underneath, right, and excavate underneath. One, to dig up parts of the original temples, okay, and the other one is they want to find this stone, right, which is supposed to be what they call a keystone holding all creation together, right. The Muslims are so deathly afraid that if somebody finds the keystone, everything will become undone, that they won't allow any excavation to take place anywhere around the Temple Hill. It has the mosque on top of it, but it is called the Temple Hill. It's kind of an interesting thing. Again, we talk about Judea and its area in the country. Okay, the West Bank. The problematic with the West Bank is when we look at it, okay, Israel has built walls and fences all around it. They put settlements all through it and around it. Okay, primarily the West Bank is your hillside area, and a lot of the hillside area has springs. It has water, right? And so the settlements are there trying to take advantage of the agriculture. What's interesting about it is most of where a lot of the settlements are, there's not a lot of people. And if there are people where the settlements are, they're there for the same reason that the Israeli settlers are there, farmland. So there is a bit of a fight over the farmland, okay? And if you look closely at it, you'll see primarily little bits of rivers coming out of the mountains. So Bethlehem, you'll notice, is in the West Bank. And going into Bethlehem at one time was fairly easy, but nowadays it's a little bit trickier, okay? When you went there, Ron, did they stop the bus and search the bus?
You changed guides.
You changed guides.
No.
We didn't change guides, but what we had was two very, very lovely Israeli female soldiers come on the bus. And our 16-year-old teenager thought the one was very cute. They speak English very well. His commented, "Wow, she's cute." Didn't go over very well. I'm sure that Jesus never would have said that. But Daniel, on the other hand, did. For the most part, They're very, very welcoming. They're very, very open. And, you know, my experience with them is they're doing a job. They have their responsibilities, do what they ask you to do, and everything is fine. Okay. Yes, they're a little intimidating. They do carry guns, right? And we'll run into a lot of people carrying guns. You're in an area where that's the way it is. But if you were to go to France nowadays or Germany nowadays, you'll run into the same thing. Okay. Flying out of Spain 2 years ago, right? We're walking through the airport, and there's the security walking through there, and they've got great big machine guns on them. It is what we deal with in the world today. And there's no real way around that. So when we look at this area, okay, we've got Nazareth up here, where Jesus is born. Tiberias in the Sea of Galilee, where he did a lot of his preaching. He went up to Jerusalem. Now, here's the interesting thing. When he was 12 years old, his family went up to Jerusalem from Nazareth. Recognize the distance? That's what the family had to hike. That was their trek. Okay? And the thing is, the scripture says, 3 days journey out before they realized. Correct? 3 days?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Some days my scripture recall is not so good. Can't access the hard drive. So the thing is, they're 3 days back, so they're somewhere in here. Then they had to return to Jerusalem to find him, and they go back to Nazareth. So when you consider his walking, right, and out into the Judean Desert, okay, down to Beersheba, we know he was there, okay. No record of him being at the Dead Sea, but Jericho is here, okay. Like I said, Nazareth here, Tiberias here, Bethsaida up there, Cana farther up, okay. This is his walking territory. This is where he's been. This is where he's traveled, okay. And you know, part of our privilege is to walk with him and to see where he went, to see what kind of countryside it was. Some of it is very, very different than when he would have been there. Okay, it's 2,000 years since transpired. Okay, but at the same time, there's also the kind of understanding. Okay, when we were in Tel Aviv, we landed in Tel Aviv, and we went just outside of Tel Aviv to one of the little churches of Emmaus. And what I found very interesting about that is, you know, Emmaus is 5 hours from Jerusalem, right? Which means the Emmaus we went to could not possibly have been the Emmaus that's referred to in the scriptures, because it's only a day's walk out, okay, 5 miles. Okay. So, somewhere in here, okay? Now, we will land here. We're going to go off the coast to Haifa, across to Nazareth, up to Tiberias, in and around the Sea of Galilee. One of the things that Jesus probably didn't do, okay, is walk around the Sea of Galilee. Okay? Fishermen, they would have crossed the Sea of Galilee. Okay? I am hoping, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't seen the entire itinerary, but we took a boat from Capernaum to Tiberias last time. And was a converted boat, like the kind of fishing boats that it would have been at the time of Jesus. So for those of you who have issues with water, bring your, you know, what do they need to bring?
Gravel.
Gravel. I don't have a problem with water. I quite enjoy the water. I think it's enjoyable, right? So
Is the sea rough?
it wasn't.
Because you talked about the winds, but that was further south.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is, like what I really enjoyed was getting up early in the morning and taking pictures of the sunrise across the sea. It was just absolutely stunning. And for some reason, nobody else was there with me at 5:30 in the morning. And I understand it, you know. It's a trip of a lifetime. Like, why would you sleep and waste it all, you know? So, but we'll travel down from Tiberias down through here. When we get into this area, okay, this is what I call the fun part down in here, okay? Because in there is where Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan. One of the things that we discover is there are a number of places where Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan. There is the Orthodox place, there is the Catholic place, and then there is the Pentecostal place. Okay, we know that Jesus was not baptized in the Pentecostal place, right? They've got a kibbutz on the river, and they have this absolutely beautiful place where people can water down. There's changing rooms and robing and all that kind of stuff where you can go down into the river and be baptized, or you can be rebaptized depending on, you know, how your faith operates. The Orthodox and the Catholics, we of course, you know, all we can disagree on is, was it over here or was it over there? And we're probably within 50 feet of each other. We just have to have something to fight over, you know. And where we go is, there's kind of nothing much there. There's a little wooden stand where you get down by the River Jordan, and it's usually pretty dirty. And for those of you who are the collector types, okay, you take a Coke bottle, fill it up with water, bring it back in your checked luggage, okay, and leave it in your house for about 4 months, okay, and watch the sediment settle, right? And you will get at least a bottom, anywhere from a third to half will be sediment. The water is absolutely filthy, right? But it's part of what it picks up in mineral content and that kind of thing. One of the kids on our last group, she did that. She brought it back. She put it in her bedroom, right? Forgot all about it, right? And the following Christmas, we were talking about it, and she goes into her bedroom and she brings it back, and we're looking at it, and you can see colorations in the sediment, okay? And of course, the heavier metals are down at the bottom, and the lighter are up at the top. And her dad, who has a bit of a background in meteorology, yes. I knew it wasn't meteors, but something. Mineralogy. And he's sort of pointing out, well, this is what this is, and this is what this is, and this is what this is, right? And then we proceeded to give her a really hard time, because when we were at the Dead Sea, she was one of the ones covering her entire body with all of this stuff, and we're going, and that's what was in the Dead Sea. Right? Do you know how to gross out a 16-year-old? That worked really well, right? So you've got this area in here, and it's interesting, you know, Jesus would have walked down, okay, alongside the Jordan River, okay. Some will argue that it was closer to Jerusalem where he was actually baptized. Some will argue it was farther away. The reality is we're not 100% sure. We know it was somewhere in the River Jordan, okay. The fact that the Orthodox and the Christians have a tendency to agree that it was this spot, or, you know, this spot within the confines of these walls, sort of leads us to believe, okay, well, that's probably, you know, our best choice. Okay. The reality is you're not 100% sure. Okay. It's 2,000 years ago. Back then, nobody was making notes. When he was going around and he was curing the lame and healing people and that kind of thing, and preaching on a hillside, nobody was really taking notes, right? And the notes were very general. Okay. So, in a sense, what we have is we're in the general location, right? And that's what we have to remember, okay? Any questions?
What could you take notes on back then, rock?
No, they had papyrus. They had papyrus, and they wrote on the papyrus, and I forget, there's papyrus, and there was another form of writing material. It was more of a cloth.
Like sheepskin.
Sheepskin, yeah. So, you know, there was some note-taking, but the reality is the Jewish people were people of oral tradition. And so it was just passed down word by word by word, right? It's sort of like the oldest scriptures we have are St. Paul's, because St. Paul wrote letters, right? And very, very few of his letters have survived, but the letters were what was out there, and people would copy the letters because that was their scriptures, right? The Old Testament was mostly oral tradition. People just knew the tradition, they knew the stories, right? And finally somebody clued into the fact that we better start writing this down, or we're going to forget it, or we're not going to get it 100% right. So here's where we come to the end of my presentation. Just invite you to break into some small groups, and you're sitting at tables, so you can join up as tables. How far do you walk every day? Now, some of you who take steps, right? How many steps are in a mile? Right? And what do you think of the food they eat?